Welcome to the sleepy underworld, a place where romance blooms, magic sparkles, and timeless fairy tales are reimagined for the dreamers of today. From heart-stirring romances to spellbinding adventures, every story is a soothing escape into a realm of love, wonder, and charm. So curl up, press play, and let us carry you away to the land of dreams. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. We'd love to know in what part of the world you are watching and what is your favorite tip for a good night's sleep. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video. I remember the day magic crept into my kitchen like a warm summer breeze, though it was the coldest winter Chicago had seen in decades. The wind howled through the gaps in our window frames, and my calloused hands trembled as I sorted through another bundle of forgotten laundry. The sharp scent of lye soap filled my nostrils as I searched the pockets, praying to find enough coins to buy milk for my girls. Our tiny apartment smelled of cabbage and coal smoke, the sense of poverty that no amount of scrubbing could erase. The sheets I was folding belonged to Mrs. Henderson, or so I thought. She hadn't returned for them in months. The cotton was worn thin from years of washing, soft as dove feathers beneath my work-roughened fingers. I shook out the yellowed linens, and something solid thumped against the wooden floor, the sound echoing in our sparse room. A cookbook. Its leather cover was worn smooth as butter, the spine cracked and mended like the hands that now held it. Golden letters flickered in the light filtering through our frosted windows. The secret recipe of hope. The pages rustled as I opened them, releasing the faint scent of vanilla and something else. Something that reminded me of my mother's kitchen in better days. I almost tossed it aside. Hope wouldn't feed my 4 daughters or pay our overdue rent. But something about it called to me, like the memory of my mother's voice singing in her kitchen on Sunday mornings, the aroma of fresh bread mixing with hymns. That night, with barely enough flour to dust a countertop, I followed the simplest recipe in the book. The ingredients list read like poetry. 2 cups of patience, a handful of trust, and enough faith to fill a thimble. Below these fanciful measurements were real ones for a basic loaf of bread. The flour felt different somehow as I measured it, warmer than it should have been in our cold kitchen, almost silken between my fingers. As I kneaded the dough, memories of better days flooded back. Picnics in Lincoln Park with checkered blankets and lemonade so cold it made your teeth ache. My late husband Thomas's laughter rumbling like distant thunder, my girls playing hopscotch on sun-warmed sidewalks. The dough seemed to pulse beneath my fingers, warm and alive, responding to each press and fold like a living thing. The heat from our temperamental oven turned the kitchen windows foggy, and when I pulled out the bread, the tiny loaf had somehow multiplied, filling our kitchen with the aroma of childhood summers and safety. The crust was golden brown, crackling softly as it cooled, sending wisps of steam into the chilly air. "Mama, it smells like heaven!" little Rose exclaimed, her hollow cheeks already gaining color from the steam. The other girls gathered around, Emily, my oldest at 12, who'd grown too serious too soon, Margaret, my dreamer with ink-stained fingers, and sweet Catherine, who still hummed herself to sleep every night despite our hardships. That first bite melted on our tongues like morning sunshine, soft and warm and full of impossible things. For the first time in months, my daughter's laughter echoed off the peeling wallpaper, bright and clear as chapel bells. Even Emily's solemn face cracked into a smile as crumbs caught in her dark curls. The next morning, Mr. O'Malley, our landlord, knocked on our door. His heavy footsteps on the stairs usually sent my heart racing, but today was different. When I opened the door, the perpetual scowl on his ruddy face had softened. His cap was in his hands, and the smell of fresh bread still lingered in the hallway. "Mrs. Carroll," he said, shuffling his feet on our worn welcome mat. "I've been thinking. Times are hard for everyone. Maybe we can work something out about the rent." And perhaps, he paused, looking almost shy, you might be willing to trade some of that wonderful bread as part of the arrangement. That's when I knew. The cookbook wasn't just paper and ink. It was something more. Something that whispered of comfort and hope and possibilities. I began experimenting with other recipes. A pot of vegetable stew stretched impossibly to feed not just us, but the Martinez family downstairs who'd lost everything in the crash. Steam rose from the pot like a blessing, carrying the scent of rosemary and possibility throughout the building. When I baked sugar cookies that sparkled like fresh snow, Miss Thompson from the department store caught the scent as she passed by. She followed her nose to our door and offered me a job mending fine dresses, work that paid 3 times what I earned from taking in laundry. The cookies crumbled in her mouth as she spoke, and I watched joy light up her tired eyes. Word spread through the neighborhood about my cooking. Women with hollow eyes and empty pantries began appearing at my door, drawn by the perpetual warmth that now radiated from our apartment. I never turned them away. Each recipe required more than just ingredients. They demanded love, hope, and unwavering faith. If my heart wavered, if doubt crept in like winter frost, the magic faded like morning mist. The cookbook taught me its secrets slowly. A dash of cinnamon in the apple pie brought luck. You could smell it in the spicy sweet aroma that filled the kitchen. Rosemary in the bread prompted forgotten memories. One bite, and people would close their eyes, smiling at thoughts of happier days. Honey and tea healed more than sore throats. It mended broken spirits, its golden warmth spreading through the body like liquid sunlight. My girls flourished under the cookbook's gentle magic. Margaret, my second eldest, discovered she could make flowers bloom in window boxes even in December after eating my gardener's biscuits. The scent of lilacs and roses drifted down the street in midwinter, drawing amazed crowds. Catherine, always so quiet, found her voice after sipping mint hot chocolate, her words flowing smooth and sweet as the drink itself. And Tiny Rose started dancing again, her feet as light as spun sugar, moving to music only she could hear. Then came the day the man in the charcoal suit appeared. His shoes were polished to mirrors, his hat tipped at a rakish angle, but his eyes were empty as dried wells. The scent of cold metal and dried leaves followed him up our stairs. "Mrs. Carroll," his voice oozed like cold molasses, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." He pulled out a wallet fat with bills, the leather creaking as he opened it. "Name your price." I looked at the cookbook, its pages now stained with butter and love, bookmarked with my daughter's drawings and pressed flowers from our tiny garden. In its margins I'd written my own notes. Add extra vanilla to lift spirits. Stir counterclockwise for good fortune. Always sing while kneading bread. The book warmed beneath my touch, as if seeking protection. "It's not for sale," I told him, my voice stronger than I felt. His smile never reached his eyes. "Everything has a price, Mrs. Carroll. Everything." "Not hope," I replied. "Not love." He left the scent of bitter almonds and disappointment in his wake. That night, our dreams were troubled, but I baked peace back into our home with lavender shortbread and chamomile tea. As the years passed, I noticed I needed the cookbook less and less. The magic had seeped into my hands, my heart, my very being. My little laundry service grew into a successful bakery, where every treat came with a side of comfort and courage. The scent of hope and fresh possibilities drifted down the street each morning as I opened the doors. My daughters grew strong and kind, each carrying a bit of magic in their souls. Emily became a teacher, feeding young minds with the same patience I'd learned from the cookbook. Margaret opened a flower shop that bloomed all year round, filling the neighborhood with impossible colors and fragrances. Catherine's voice carried hope through the radio waves, and Rose danced on stages across the country, leaving trails of joy in her wake. When they ask me about the secret of my success, I tell them what the cookbook taught me. that magic isn't in the ingredients or the instructions. It's in the love we stir into every pot, the hope we knead into every loaf, the faith we sprinkle over every life we touch. The cookbook still sits in my kitchen drawer, its magic waiting for the next person who needs it. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear it humming lullabies, reminding me that even in the darkest times, hope rises like bread in a warm oven, and love multiplies when you share it. My daughters have children of their own now, and when they visit, we bake together. Their children ask for the special cookies that make wishes come true, or the soup that chases away storms. I smile and tell them the real magic ingredient: love that's stronger than any depression, hope that rises higher than any bread, and faith that's sweeter than any dream. And sometimes, when the kitchen is quiet and the moon hangs like a silver dollar in the sky, I open the cookbook and whisper, "Thank you." The pages ruffle in response, and I smell vanilla and possibility, knowing that magic isn't something you find, it's something you create, one recipe at a time. The aroma of rain-kissed cobblestones mingled with the heady perfume of night-blooming jasmine as I lay in my bed, my thoughts drifting back to the mysterious shop I had discovered earlier that day. Sweet Charms, confection stood out against the twilight like a jewel, its windows radiating an otherworldly glow that seemed to dance between starlight and sunset. My silk sheets whispered against my skin as I tossed and turned, unable to forget the way the shop's gold lettering had shimmered in the fading light. The display window had showcased candies that gleamed like precious stones, rubies, sapphires, and diamonds transformed into edible treasures. The very air around the shop had thrummed with an energy that made my skin tingle and my heart race. Logic urged me to stay in bed, to dismiss these fanciful thoughts as mere imagination. But something about that night, perhaps the way moonbeams painted liquid silver across my walls, or how the air crackled with possibility, made me question everything I had ever believed about the world. Before reason could prevail, I found myself sliding my feet into burgundy velvet slippers and wrapping my grandmother's cashmere shawl around my shoulders. The fabric carried whispers of her rose perfume, bringing back memories of countless bedtime stories filled with magic and true love. It felt right to wear it on this night of all nights. The city had transformed in the late hour, becoming a realm of shadows and secrets. My footsteps echoed softly against the ancient stones as I made my way through the empty streets. The usual urban symphony had faded to a gentle murmur, broken only by the melancholic song of a distant nightingale and the rustling of maple leaves dancing in the breeze. Sweet Charms materialized before me, like something from a dream, its golden light spilling onto the wet pavement in pools of liquid warmth. Common sense insisted the shop should be closed, yet the brass door handle turned easily in my grasp, warm, as if it had been waiting for my touch. A crystalline chime announced my entrance, and I stepped into an atmosphere thick with wonder. The scents enveloped me immediately. Rich, dark chocolate and Madagascar vanilla spun sugar and fresh cream, but beneath it all lay something more ancient and mysterious, like leather-bound grimoires and midnight gardens in full bloom. Towering shelves reached toward the ceiling, lined with countless glass jars containing candies that seemed alive with inner radiance. Deep crimson drops pulsed like living embers. Violet spirals twisted and spun as if dancing to unheard music, and golden orbs throbbed with the warmth of captured sunlight. "The shop has been expecting you," a melodious voice called out, drawing my attention to the figure behind an intricately carved mahogany counter. The man's silver hair caught the golden light like moonbeams woven into silk, and his eyes held depths of wisdom that seemed to span centuries. His waistcoat of midnight purple velvet was embroidered with silver threads that appeared to shift and change when I looked away. "I'm Ambrose," he continued, his voice carrying notes of wind chimes and summer storms. You're here because your heart seeks something your mind cannot name." His words resonated deep within my soul. I thought of my apartment with its shelves overflowing with romance novels, of countless nights spent dreaming of a love that felt like stardust and sunrise, of the perpetual yearning for something more than the mundane world could offer. "I don't know what drew me here," I whispered, my voice barely disturbing the shop's enchanted atmosphere. Ambrose's smile deepened the fascinating web of lines around his eyes. "The heart possesses wisdom beyond reason's understanding." His elegant fingers danced over the collection of jars before him. "Each sweet in this shop contains a different enchantment. Some bestow courage, others grant clarity. Some—" He reached for a small box perched on a shelf so high I hadn't noticed it before. "Some guide us to love." The box he placed before me was covered in velvet the color of dusk, worn to a buttery softness that spoke of countless hands before mine. Inside, nestled on a bed of sterling silk, lay a single piece of candy, a heart-shaped crystal that pulsed with its own rhythm, perfectly matching the beat of my heart. "The sweetest dreams," he explained, his voice taking on an almost reverent quality. "It reveals the path to your heart's deepest desire, but only for those brave enough to follow where it leads. The journey isn't always direct, and what you discover might surprise you." The candy felt warm against my palm. Tiny rainbows danced within its clear depths, and I could have sworn I heard the faintest melody emanating from its core. "Let it dissolve as you fall asleep," Ambrose instructed. "The magic will weave itself into your dreams, and when you wake, you'll see the world anew. But remember, true magic lies not in the candy itself, but in your willingness to see what has always been there, waiting to be discovered." I held the box close to my heart as I stepped back into the night. The air felt different now, electric with potential, and every shadow seemed to hold infinite possibilities. The walk home passed in a blur, my feet barely touching the ground. In my bedroom, I changed into my favorite silk nightgown, its cool touch a contrast to my warm skin. The candy glowed softly in the moonlight as I placed it on my tongue. The taste exploded across my senses. Sun-warmed strawberries fresh from the vine, delicate frost patterns on winter windows, the effervescent first sip of champagne, the lingering kiss of sunset. As sleep claimed me, I felt myself falling into a world where magic wasn't just possible. It was the very essence of reality. Dawn arrived with unprecedented clarity. Sunlight streamed through my window in tangible ribbons of gold, and the air itself seemed to sparkle with diamond dust. Every sound carried new meaning. The morning birds created a symphony of purpose, and the distant church bells rang with destiny. I dressed with intentional care, choosing a dress the color of midnight scattered with tiny silver stars. Each item I touched hummed with significance. My grandmother's locket with its secret compartment, shoes that whispered rather than clicked against the floor, and a bracelet that captured light like trapped moonbeams. The city had transformed overnight. Colors blazed with new intensity. Scents told stories of their origins, and sounds wove themselves into melodies. Every person I passed glowed with their unique inner light, and coincidences accumulated like autumn leaves. A book falling open to exactly the right passage, a street musician playing the melody that had been haunting my dreams, an unexpected detour leading to a hidden courtyard, alive with iridescent butterflies. The local coffee shop drew me in with the rich aroma of freshly ground beans and something more, a hint of that same mysterious scent from Sweet Charms. The barista's eyes sparkled with knowing as he handed me a drink I hadn't ordered, but that proved to be exactly what my soul craved. "The bookstore next door is calling your name," he suggested, though I'd never mentioned my love of books. "I have a feeling today will be special." The familiar bookstore felt different, transformed by the same magic that had touched everything else. Wind chimes by the door sang the same crystal notes as Sweet Charms' bell. and the beloved scent of old books was enhanced by something that reminded me of starlight and possibility. Moving through the shelves felt like walking through a dream. Books whispered their stories to me, and glimpses of other patrons appeared like scenes from an enchanted film. A woman writing in a journal that glowed with soft light, a man whose shadow took the shape of wings, a child reading to a cat with eyes like golden coins. In the poetry section, my fingers brushed against a leather-bound volume at the exact moment another hand reached for it. The touch sent electricity coursing through my entire body, and I looked up into eyes the color of honey and autumn leaves and ancient magic. "I've been searching for this book my whole life," he said, his voice resonating with something deep inside my soul. Though I'm beginning to think I was searching for this moment. His name was Oliver, and talking to him felt like remembering rather than meeting. We shared stories over cups of tea that never grew cold, and each word built a bridge between our worlds. He spoke of dreams that mirrored mine exactly, of feeling out of place in a world too ordinary for his soul, of visiting a mysterious candy shop the night before. "It tasted like summer strawberries," he said, watching me with eyes that saw straight to my heart. "And winter frost," I finished, and the air between us crystallized with destiny. Hours passed like minutes as we talked. Oliver told me of the stories he wrote, tales of magic hidden in plain sight, and love that transcended ordinary reality. I shared my collection of midnight adventures and impossible dreams, and each confession brought us closer to a truth we both somehow always knew. Days blended into weeks, and our love story wrote itself in moments of everyday magic. We discovered hidden places in the city that seemed to exist just for us, a garden where flowers bloomed according to visitors' emotions, a cafe where the coffee tasted like liquid memories, and a rooftop where the stars danced just for us. Each day brought new enchantments. Oliver's touch left trails of starlight on my skin, and our kisses tasted like the candy that had brought us together. We read poetry to one another in voices that made the words come alive, and our laughter created butterflies that fluttered away on wings of light. One snowy evening, as perfect crystalline flakes spiraled around us, Oliver led me to a familiar storefront. Sweet charms glowed with welcome, and Ambrose stood in the doorway as if he had been expecting us. "The sweetest dreams," Oliver said, presenting a velvet box identical to the one that had started our journey. Inside, a ring sparkled with an inner fire that matched the candy hearts that had brought us together. "Are the ones we live while we're awake?" "Yes," I whispered, and the snow swirled around us in patterns of joy. Ambrose's smile held all the wisdom of the ages as he presented us with 2 more candies, these shaped like intertwined hearts. "For the next chapter of your story," he said, his words carrying the weight of prophecy. Years later, I still remember that magical night, as if it were yesterday. Oliver and I have created our own enchantments, in the way he brings me tea every morning, knowing exactly how I like it. In the notes we leave for one another, words of love hidden in unexpected places. In the gentle touch of his hand finding mine in the dark. Our daughter now sits on my lap, her eyes wide with wonder as I tell her stories of the mysterious candy shop where magic and love intertwine. She wears my grandmother's shawl, which still carries the faintest hint of rose perfume, and asks me to tell the tale again and again. "Is it real, Mama?" she whispers, clutching her own small velvet box from Sweet Charms, a gift from Ambrose on her 5th birthday. I smile, catching Oliver's eye across the room. He still looks at me the way he did that first day in the bookstore, as if I'm the most magical thing he's ever seen. "The most real magic," I tell her, "is the kind we create ourselves, with every act of love, every moment of wonder, every choice to believe in the extraordinary." As I tuck her into bed, I catch a glimpse of golden light through her window. Sweet Charms confections, still standing sentinel in the night, waiting for the next dreamer brave enough to believe. But the true magic, I now know, isn't in the candy or the shop or even in Ambrose's knowing smile. It's in the heart's capacity to recognize wonder, to embrace mystery, and to love deeply enough to transform the ordinary world into something extraordinary. Each night, as I fall asleep beside the person who makes reality more magical than any fantasy, I smile, knowing that tomorrow will bring new wonders. Because the sweetest dreams aren't the ones that come while sleeping. They're the ones we build together, heartbeat by heartbeat, in a world that reveals its magic to those brave enough to believe in love. And somewhere in the city, a bell chimes like crystal in the night, calling to another heart ready to begin its own magical journey. The scent of caramelized sugar and warm vanilla beckoned me through the rain-soaked evening, a lighthouse of sweetness guiding me through Everhaven's dimly lit streets. My worn shoes splashed through puddles that reflected the golden glow from Clayton's candy shop, the storefront's beveled glass windows glowing like amber in the storm. The elegant cursive letters of the shop's sign danced and shimmered, the fat droplets of rain catching the light like suspended diamonds. My fingers traced the damp golden wrapper I'd found earlier that day, one of Mr. Clayton's legendary peppermints, discovered in a rain-slicked alley behind the shop. The metallic paper felt unusually warm against my skin, despite the bitter chill of the autumn evening. Thunder rolled overhead, and I pressed closer to the window, my breath fogging the glass as I gazed at the wonderland. Crystal jars lined mahogany shelves, each filled with confections that defied natural law. Candies that glowed like captured fireflies cast shifting patterns across polished brass fixtures. Chocolate truffles hummed a gentle lullaby, their dark shells gleaming with iridescent swirls. Rainbow-hued lollipops pirouetted slowly in their display case, though no breeze stirred the air. My stomach clenched at the sight, reminding me of the empty cupboards waiting at home. The door swung open with a melodious chime, releasing a wave of warmth that carried the mingled aromas of melted chocolate, spun sugar, and something indefinable, like the first snow of winter mixed with the last ray of summer sunset. I hesitated momentarily before stepping inside, telling myself I'd only warm up for a few minutes before continuing my search for dropped coins or discarded returnable bottles. The shop's interior stretched impossibly beyond what its modest exterior suggested. Crystal chandeliers floated overhead without visible support, their faceted surfaces throwing kaleidoscope patterns across the hardwood floors. The air felt thick with magic, and I tasted possibilities and dreams on my tongue. I crept toward the back of the shop, drawn to a particular jar that appeared to contain liquid starlight. The silvery substance within swirled of its own accord, casting moving constellations across my rain-dampened face. The low light caught the hollows of my cheeks, reminding me of how long it had been since my last proper meal. "Ah, I see you've discovered my midnight dream drops," a gentle voice said behind me, warm as honey and smooth as melted chocolate. I spun around to find a tall man watching me, his silver-streaked hair swept back from a kind face lined with laugh wrinkles. His burgundy velvet coat sparkled with what appeared to be crystallized sugar, and a collection of golden candy-making tools hung from an intricately designed leather belt at his waist. "Mr. Clayton," I whispered, the wrapper crinkling in my clenched fist. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be here." His smile deepened the wrinkles around his eyes, which held the same warm amber color as his shop's windows. "On the contrary, my dear, no one finds their way into my shop by accident, especially not on a night like this." He gestured to the wrapper in my hand. "And it seems you've already received an invitation." "An invitation?" "Indeed." He produced an identical candy from his pocket, its golden wrapper catching the light like a fallen star. My golden peppermints are very particular about who finds them. They only appear to those with the sweetest wishes in their hearts. The candy pulsed with its own inner light as he held it out to me. Go on, he encouraged, his voice soft as velvet. Make your wish. My fingers trembled as I accepted the candy. Its wrapper felt warm and almost alive, like holding a tiny beating heart. I closed my eyes, thinking of home, of my little sister Emma's hollow cheeks and my mother's exhausted eyes as she worked endless shifts at the diner. I thought of our drafty apartment with its leaking roof, the empty pantry, and the heating that worked only when it chose to. I wish, I whispered, the words carrying the weight of years of quiet desperation. I wish I could help my family have enough. A warm home, food on the table, and I swallowed past the lump in my throat. And maybe just a little bit of magic to make them smile again. The peppermint melted on my tongue like a snowflake, flooding my mouth with impossible flavors. The crispness of winter mornings, the warmth of summer twilight, the sweetness of fresh hope, and something indefinable that made my heart ache with longing. When I opened my eyes, the shop had transformed. The walls had dissolved into swirling mist the color of mother of pearl, revealing a vast space that laughed at the laws of physics. A golden archway beckoned, beyond which I glimpsed wonders that made my breath catch. Trees with cotton candy leaves and pastel hues, a river that flowed with liquid rainbows, catching the light like precious gems, and clouds that rained tiny candies that chimed like bells as they fell. "Welcome to my workshop," Mr. Clayton said, his eyes twinkling like stars in spun sugar, though perhaps not for much longer. Before I could question his cryptic statement, the shop's bell chimed. 3 more people entered, shaking off the storm's remnants. A young woman in designer clothes wrinkled her nose at the sight of my shabby jacket, her leather boots worth more than everything I owned. Beside her, a man with wild Einstein-like hair pulled curious gadgets from his numerous pockets, each whirring and clicking with mysterious purpose. The third arrival was a young woman seemingly attempting to fold herself into invisibility, her paint-stained fingers clutching a weathered sketchbook. "Excellent, we're all here," Mr. Clayton declared, clapping his hands together. "Miss Victoria Chase," he nodded to the wealthy woman. "Mr. Edison Wright." The inventor gave a distracted wave, still examining a nearby display of floating jelly beans. "Miss Penny Lang," the artist jumped at being addressed, and, of course, Nora Thompson. His warm smile wrapped around me like a blanket. "Welcome to your trial." "Trial?" Victoria's voice cut through the air like a knife through hard candy. "I was promised exclusive access to your secret recipes." "You were promised an opportunity," Mr. Clayton corrected firmly. "All of you were drawn here by my golden peppermints, each with a wish burning in your heart. But wishes, like candy, require the right ingredients to come true." He led us through the golden archway into a realm that defied imagination. The air itself tasted of a sweetness filled with floating bubbles that burst with different flavors when touched. One moment strawberry fields in summer, the next cool peppermint caves. Butterflies with wings of spun sugar fluttered past, leaving trails of edible glitter in their wake. Our first stop was a vast chamber that stretched to a ceiling lost in shadows. Mountains of treasure filled the space. Gold coins that clinked musically, gems that caught the light like hard candy, and artifacts that practically hummed with power. Victoria's eyes blazed with desire. "The Vault of Values," Mr. Clayton announced, his voice echoing off precious metals and crystalline formations. "Feel free to take whatever you wish, but remember, everything has a price." Victoria rushed forward, her designer heels clicking against the golden floor. With each handful of treasure she scooped up, her expensive clothes transformed. Silk became cotton, then burlap, then rags. Her perfectly styled hair dulled and tangled, and her manicured nails cracked and broke. Soon she stood in tatters, clutching her prizes as tears cut tracks through the dirt on her face. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Value isn't always what it appears to be," I said softly, offering her my worn but clean handkerchief. "Sometimes the most precious things can't be held at all." Victoria stared at me, seeing me for the first time. Slowly she opened her hands, letting the gold cascade to the floor. As the last coin fell, her appearance restored itself, though her eyes held a new wisdom that hadn't been there before. The next chamber housed an enormous candy-making machine that resembled something from a steampunk fever dream. Brass pipes twisted and curved like frozen music. Glass tubes bubbled with rainbow liquids, and dozens of dials and levers gleamed invitingly. Edison immediately circled it like a bee buzzing around a flower, muttering about gear ratios and thermal coefficients. "The Symphony of Sweets," Mr. Clayton explained, running his hand lovingly along a copper pipe that hummed in response. "It can produce any candy imaginable, but only when all its parts work in perfect harmony." Edison spent hours trying to operate the machine alone, his frustration growing with each failed attempt. The candy it produced under his solitary efforts came out wrong. Sour when it should be sweet, hard when it should be soft, shapes twisted and colors muddy. Finally, Penny stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper, as she suggested we all try together. The transformation was immediate and magical. Edison's technical knowledge guided the machine's operations. Victoria's refined palate adjusted the flavors. Penny's artistic eye directed the shapes and colors. And my understanding of what makes people smile helped infuse each piece with joy. The machine sang to life, its music filling the air as it created candies more wonderful than any of us could have imagined alone. Penny's challenge waited in a circular room lined with mirrors, each reflecting a different version of herself. Some showed her confident and successful, others broken and worthless. The conflicting images overwhelmed her, and she began to cry, her tears falling like dropped sugar crystals. I took her paint-stained hand in my calloused one. "Look," I said, leading her to a particular mirror that seemed to glow from within. "This is how we see you." In it, her reflection radiated with inner light, her creativity and kindness visible as a beautiful aurora around her. One by one, the other mirrors shifted to show the same truth, and Penny stood taller, finally seeing her worth reflected at her. Through each trial, Mr. Clayton watched with growing satisfaction, his eyes twinkling like sugar crystals in sunlight. Finally, he led us to a simple door made of warm, honey-colored wood that hummed with contentment. "Beyond this door lies the heart of the shop," he said, his voice rich with emotion. "Nora, you haven't faced a trial because you've been the trial for everyone else. Your compassion, your natural ability to see and nurture the best in others. These are the true magic that keeps this place alive." He opened the door to reveal a room that felt like every happy memory of home distilled into physical form. A plush armchair sat beside a fireplace that changed colors as it burned, from warm gold to soft blue to gentle purple. Ancient candy-making tools lined the walls, each one telling stories of generations of sweet dreams made real. A massive leather-bound book rested on a pedestal, its pages filled with recipes that looked more like poetry than instructions. "The shop needs a new guardian," Mr. Clayton said, his voice gentle but firm. "Someone with the right ingredients in their heart to keep its magic alive. Someone who understands that the sweetest wishes are the ones that help others." He turned to me, his eyes glowing with certainty. "It's chosen you, Nora." My heart soared and plummeted simultaneously. "But my family?" Mr. Clayton's eyes crinkled with joy. "Look." He waved his hand, and an image appeared in the color-changing flames. My mother and Emma entering a beautiful townhouse attached to the back of the shop. My mother's face glowed with wonder as she explored the fully stocked kitchen, her tired lines melting away. Emma's laughter rang like silver bells as she discovered her room filled with books, toys, and a window seat perfect for dreaming. "The shop takes care of its own," Mr. Clayton said softly. "Your wish was never just for yourself. That's why you're perfect for this role." The others received parting gifts that reflected their growth. Victoria, a single gold coin that would always find its way to those in need. Edison, a set of tools that only worked through collaboration. Penny, a paintbrush that showed her how others saw her art, its handle warm with encouragement. As Mr. Clayton prepared to leave, he placed his candy-making tools in my hands. They hummed with generations of magic and possibility, fitting my grip as if they'd been waiting for me all along. "Remember," he said, placing a weathered hand on my shoulder, "the secret ingredient is always love." The shop settled around me like a warm embrace as my new friends departed, each walking toward lives transformed by the night's magic. Through the window, I saw the storm had cleared completely. Stars twinkled in the velvet sky, looking exactly like scattered sugar crystals. I smiled, already imagining the wishes I could help come true. After all, everyone deserves a little magic in their life, especially those who think they've run out of sweet dreams to believe in. In the window display, a jar of golden peppermints caught the starlight, waiting for the next pure heart to find its way to my door. Nestled at the end of a quiet cobblestone street, where golden lamplights flickered like fireflies in the dusk, stood Willowby's Whimsical Bakes. The scent of cardamom and vanilla drifted through its weathered oak door, curling around wrought iron lampposts and mingling with the morning mist that cloaked the city. Mr. Willowby, a stout man with kind eyes and flower-dusted sleeves, had been the keeper of its magic for as long as anyone could remember. His hands, marked by decades of kneading dough and shaping pastries, moved with practiced grace as he infused each creation with its own unique enchantment. The crackle of fresh-baked bread crust, the silky smoothness of chocolate ganache, the delicate snap of perfectly laminated croissants. Each sensation carried possibilities wrapped in butter and sugar. The shop itself breathed with ancient magic. Copper pots hung from rough-hewn wooden beams, their surfaces reflecting the dancing flames of the brick ovens. Shelves of ingredients lined the walls, jars of spices that whispered secrets, bottles of essences that captured memories, and bags of flour that sparkled in the early morning light. Rose Bennett pushed open the door one misty autumn morning, the brass bell above chiming a melody that seemed to echo her heartbeat. The warm air enveloped her, carrying the scent of cinnamon and possibilities. Her artist's fingers, stained with watercolors from countless unfinished paintings, trembled as she approached the counter. Mr. Willowby looked up from where he was dusting powdered sugar over a tray of lemon-filled pastries, each one glowing with a soft inner light. His eyes crinkled at the corners as he studied her, the paint-splattered smock, the uncertainty in her stance, the way her gaze drifted over the displays without really seeing them. "Ah," he said softly, reaching beneath the counter. The sound of rustling paper filled the quiet shop as he wrapped a delicate pastry. "This one has been waiting for you." The cinnamon brioche felt warm in Rose's hands, its surface dusted with crystallized sugar that caught the light like morning frost. As she took her first bite, the world shifted around her. Colors intensified, sounds sharpened, and suddenly she was standing in an art gallery, but not one she recognized. Paintings lined the walls, each one alive with color and emotion. They were her works, she realized with a start, but not ones she had painted yet. In the center of the room stood a man she didn't recognize, his dark curls touched with silver at the temples. He moved from painting to painting with careful consideration, his fingers hovering just above the canvases as if he could feel the emotions woven into each brushstroke. The vision faded, leaving Rose standing in the bakery with the taste of cinnamon and possibility on her tongue. Mr. Willowby had already turned back to his work, humming softly as he shaped another loaf of bread. That evening, As Rose cleaned her brushes in her tiny studio apartment, the memories of the vision lingered like the last notes of a favorite song. The next morning found her back at Willowby's, drawn by something stronger than hunger. Each day brought a new pastry, each one carrying a different glimpse of what could be. Her paintings hanging in galleries around the world, her name spoken with reverence in artistic circles, and always, always, that mysterious man with the silver-touched curls. The seasons turned, marked by the changing light through the bakery's stained glass windows. Winter painted the cobblestones with frost, and still Rose returned, though the visions had begun to feel more like a beautiful torture. Her paintings felt flat and lifeless compared to what she had seen. On a bitter December evening, when the wind howled through the narrow streets and snow fell in thick flakes, Rose sought refuge in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She had wandered into the contemporary wing, lost in thought when a familiar scent stopped her in her tracks. Cinnamon. "Beautiful work, isn't it?" a warm voice asked, and Rose turned to find herself face to face with the man from her visions. His name was Aaron Blake, he told her, and he was the museum's new curator of contemporary art. His eyes widened with recognition as she introduced herself, and soon they were sharing stories of mysterious visions seen in the steam of fresh-baked bread and the swirl of cappuccino foam. When Aaron mentioned his daily visits to a certain whimsical bakery, Rose felt her heart flutter with understanding. Their courtship unfolded like a painting coming to life, each day adding new layers of color and depth. Aaron's appreciation for art matched Rose's passion for creating it. He saw the beauty in her unfinished works, the potential in her rough sketches. Under his encouragement, and Mr. Willowby's continued magical guidance, Rose's art transformed, becoming more vivid, more alive, more like the paintings she had seen in her first vision. Mr. Willowby watched it all with quiet satisfaction, his hands constantly at work creating new enchantments in sugar and flour. He knew that his magic didn't create destinies. It merely illuminated the paths waiting to be discovered. The real magic happened in the quiet moments, in shared conversations about color theory over fresh-baked scones, in the way Aaron's eyes lit up when Rose showed him a new painting, in the simple act of two souls recognizing themselves in one another. Spring returned to the cobblestone street, and with it came Rose's first gallery showing. As guests filled the space, discussing her work over glasses of champagne, Rose stood back and watched her vision become reality. Her paintings lined the walls, alive with color and emotion, each one more vibrant than the last. Aaron moved through the crowd just as she had seen him in that first vision, his pride evident in every gesture. Later that night, they walked hand in hand to Willowby's, where Mr. Willowby waited with a box of fresh pastries, 2 of everything, perfectly paired. The scent of cinnamon and magic swirled around them as they sat at the small table by the window, planning their future over cups of steaming tea and plates of enchanted desserts. The bakery continued its work, sending out little pieces of enchantment into the world. Some found their courage, others found their purpose, and a few, like Rose and Aaron, found both. The bell above the door chimed its welcome song day after day, and Mr. Willowby continued to bake, weaving magic and hope into every creation, knowing that sometimes the greatest enchantment of all was simply showing people what was already in their hearts. And somewhere in the city, in a sunlit studio filled with the scent of paint and possibility, Rose's newest canvas waited, ready to capture the magic that had brought her here. Magic that tasted of cinnamon and dreams, of courage and love, of a future waiting to be painted one brushstroke at a time. I never expected to find love in a world made of candy, but that's exactly what happened the night exhaustion finally caught up with me at my pastry workbench. The sharp scent of lemon zest still clung to my fingers, mixing with the warm vanilla and toasted sugar that perpetually perfumed my kitchen. My latest creation, an elaborate wedding cake with hand-painted fondant flowers, sat half-finished before me, and its empty tiers were a reminder of all the work still ahead. The gentle hum of the refrigerators lulled me into what I thought would be just a moment's rest. Instead, my eyes fluttered open to an extraordinary sight that made me question my sanity. Gone was my sterile industrial kitchen with its stainless steel and fluorescent lights. In its place stretched a meadow that defied reality. Flowers bloomed with cotton candy petals and marshmallow centers, their stems crafted from twisted green licorice that swayed in a breeze scented with strawberry and cream. The grass beneath my feet consisted of fine strands of green apple taffy that released their tart fragrance with each step. In the distance, mountains of shimmering rock candy pierced clouds that looked suspiciously like freshly whipped cream, their crystalline faces catching the light of what appeared to be a sun made entirely of spun sugar. The air felt different, lighter and sweeter, carrying the mingled aromas of every dessert I'd ever loved. I reached out to touch a nearby flower, wondering if the stress of running my bakery had finally broken something essential in my brain. The cotton candy petal dissolved on my tongue with a familiar sweetness that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. When was the last time I'd allowed myself to simply enjoy the taste of something sweet? These days, every creation was about precision, about perfection, about maintaining my reputation as the city's most innovative pastry chef. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice startled me from my reverie. I turned to find a man standing nearby, his dark eyes wide with the same wonder I felt as he took in our surroundings. He wore a wrinkled dress shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms dusted with what looked like graphite smudges. His burgundy tie hung loose around his neck, and his black hair had the disheveled look of someone who'd been running their fingers through it in frustration. In his hands, he clutched an architectural model, its tiny candy-themed elements precisely crafted. "I'm Isabella," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded despite the surreal situation. "And you are?" "Theo," he replied, offering a warm smile that made something flutter in my chest. "I was just working on designs for a candy-themed amusement park when I must have dozed off. The client wants something whimsical but profitable, whatever that means." His gentle, self-deprecating laugh sparked something in me, a recognition of another soul trapped between creativity and commerce. Before I could respond, the air shimmered like heat waves over warm caramel, and a small figure waddled toward us. It was a gingerbread person, complete with perfectly piped frosting buttons and a hat crafted from a perfectly formed gumdrop. The scent of ginger and molasses wafted around us as it moved. "Welcome to Sugarvale," the cookie announced in a voice that reminded me of warm honey drizzled over fresh scones. "You've been chosen for a very special adventure." The frosting forming its mouth moved as naturally as any human's, though the physics of this should have been impossible. The gingerbread guide explained that we needed to complete a series of challenges to find our way home. As Theo and I exchanged glances, I saw my mix of anxiety and excitement reflected in his eyes. Neither of us seemed entirely convinced this wasn't some sort of shared hallucination. But what choice did we have? Our first challenge brought us to Peppermint Valley, where candy cane trees grew in mesmerizing spiral patterns, their red stripes gleaming like fresh paint. We raced down the slopes on sleds made of crystallized peppermint, the sharp menthol scent filling our lungs with each breath. I hadn't felt such pure joy since I was a child, especially when Theo's sled spun out of control and landed in a snowbank of powdered sugar. He emerged laughing, the white powder dusting his dark hair and eyelashes like the world's sweetest snowfall. The caramel canyon tested our courage and creativity. A river of bubbling butterscotch flowed far below, releasing waves of buttery warmth that made my mouth water. The existing licorice rope bridge had gaps that needed repair, and this is where Theo's architectural expertise truly shone. He carefully constructed new sections from pulled caramel, his hands moving with the same precision I recognized from my own work with sugar. "Trust me," he said, holding out his hand as we crossed. His palm felt warm against mine, slightly rough with calluses that spoke of hands-on work, despite his professional appearance. I did trust him, and not just because we were suspended above a river of molten candy. There was something in his eyes that spoke of dependability, of someone who understood the importance of both dreams and details. The gumdrop gardens presented a different kind of challenge, with massive fruit-flavored tiles that needed to be rotated to create safe paths. Each tile released its scent when touched: grape, cherry, orange, lime, creating an ever-changing symphony of fruit flavors. Theo's logical mind complemented my intuitive approach perfectly. While he analyzed patterns, I followed the scents that we hoped would lead toward our goal. When we finally reached the center, we collapsed onto a bench made of compressed jelly beans, breathless and giddy. The bench slowly molded to our shapes, providing surprisingly comfortable support. The air was perfumed with subtle floral notes: rose, violet, and lavender, offering a gentle respite from the intense fruit flavors of the maze. "You know," Theo said softly, his shoulder pressed warmly against mine, "I haven't felt this alive in years. My firm keeps pushing me to design more practical, efficient buildings. Glass boxes and steel frames. I'd forgotten how much I love creating spaces that spark joy." I understood completely. My bakery started as a dream to make people happy through desserts. Now it's all about Instagram-worthy designs and celebrity clients. I can't remember the last time I baked something just because it made me smile. The admission felt like pulling a thorn from my heart, one I hadn't even known was there. As we progressed through more challenges, our connection deepened. Theo showed me how to build structurally sound towers from tempered chocolate blocks, while I taught him the secret to crafting perfect spun sugar decorations. We shared stories of our lives, his childhood spent building elaborate structures from anything he could find, my grandmother's kitchen where I first learned to bake. Each challenge brought us closer until the simple brush of his hand against mine sent sparks through my entire body. The licorice mountain loomed before us, its black surface gleaming like polished obsidian. We needed to reach its peak, but the twisting paths seemed impossible to navigate. Together, we crafted a ladder from giant lollipops, their swirled surfaces providing surprisingly stable footing. We supported one another both physically and emotionally as we climbed, sharing encouragement and strength. At the summit, exhausted but triumphant, Theo pulled me close. The wind carried the scent of wild berries and possibility. When our lips met, the kiss tasted of adventure and hope, and something uniquely us. His arms around me felt like coming home, even in this strange candy wonderland. Finally, we reached the Sugar Palace, its crystalline walls refracting rainbow lights that danced across our skin. The structure defied physics with delicate spun sugar supports that held up massive panels of clear crystal candy. But our awe turned to despair when the gingerbread guide revealed a cruel twist. Only one of us could return home. The thought of leaving this world without Theo was too much to bear, but so was the idea of him sacrificing his life for me. "You have to go," Theo insisted, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Your bakery needs you, and your staff depends on you for their livelihoods." I shook my head fiercely. "No, you should go. You have clients depending on you, projects that need to be completed." The words felt hollow even as I spoke them, knowing that neither of our careers mattered as much as what we'd found together. We argued back and forth, each trying to sacrifice our chance for the other. At that moment, I realized I'd fallen completely in love with this kind, creative man who approached every challenge with both logic and wonder. He saw the world as I did, a place where magic and practicality coexisted. The palace walls shimmered like caramelized sugar, and our guide reappeared with a knowing smile that crinkled the frosting around its eyes. "The final test was never about choosing who returns," they explained. their voice warm with approval. It was about discovering what matters most. Love is the greatest magic of all. The walls dissolved in a shower of sparkles that tasted like spun sugar and starlight, and I felt myself falling. I woke up at my workbench, my heart heavy with the fading memory of a dream. But as I lifted my head, something impossible met my eyes. Across from me sat Theo, blinking awake in confusion. Between us was a plate of perfectly formed macaroons in pastel colors, each one decorated with tiny designs that matched the challenges we'd faced. A note written in a sparkling golden script read, "Love is the sweetest adventure." 1 year later, our bakery, Sugarvale, is thriving. We create desserts that bring joy and wonder to everyone who visits, though none are quite as magical as the world where we fell in love. Our signature collection features candies and pastries inspired by our journey, Peppermint Valley swirl cookies, caramel canyon bars, and our most popular item, cotton candy Cloud 9, a delicate confection that dissolves on the tongue, just like those first flowers I tasted in the meadow. Sometimes, late at night as we're cleaning up, Theo pulls me into a dance among the display cases. As we twirl past our creations, I swear I catch the scent of cotton candy flowers and hear the distant laughter of a gingerbread guide. In these moments, I'm reminded that the sweetest dreams aren't the ones we have while sleeping. They're the ones we build together, one loving moment at a time. Every now and then, a customer will comment on the unusual warmth and joy they feel in our shop. Theo and I just share a secret smile, knowing that we've managed to bring a little bit of Sugarvale's magic into the real world. Not through any supernatural means, but through the simple power of two people who remembered how to dream.